Hello and welcome to the first video podcast, or vodcast, if you will, of the podcast for the recently deceased. As this is a new format and our first episode of the year, we've decided that we're going to count down our top five, talk about some best performances, some honorable mentions, biggest disappointments,
hmm
things like that. Rodney is going to tell you about what makes a top five.
All right. So, welcome everyone. I'm super excited for us to be doing this video format with you. We have a lot of. It's not that I have delusions of grandeur, but I really look forward to us doing this, and I see this doing great things in the future. So, I'm glad that everyone's along for the ride. For me, top five, whenever we talk about horror, is a combination of a couple elements. It's got to be a great movie. It has to be a good horror movie. It can't be something that's more prone to an action or thriller. But whenever I like to consider what's my top five, I have a lot of things where I want it to be good, but I want to find something that's oftentimes a hidden gem. Oftentimes, I want to find something that hits a genre that doesn't have a lot of representation or good representation as within that subgenre. So if something's a really good werewolf movie that came out that year, it might be considered better than something that's just a standard slasher, which there's a litany of in the universe of horror. And so for me, that werewolf movie might get more attention than all of the slashers. That might be a little bit better than it, but because I want to see a werewolf movie represented in my top five, I'll probably list it ahead of that. So there's some criteria that, for me personally, in my opinions, I average things a little bit further up than others because of that. But the thing that I really like about horror in general, and I think Nate, you can agree with this, is that there are so many ways that people are into horror. There's all kinds of different subgenres and different things that they respond to, whether it's super actiony or jump scares or ghost story or found footage. There's different elements within the horror genre that trigger certain viewers in such a way that to them it just hits the right note and is celebrated because of that. And so I'm hoping that we each, with our own different kind of backgrounds, can bring attention to a lot of films, some of which people have seen, but others that they might not have seen. That this will get a broader audience to those films and increase the amount of celebratory enthusiasm that everyone has for the genre in general. So for my top five, it's going to be all over the place. You might not agree, but that's part of the genre.
Oh yeah.
No one really agrees with a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of A plus movies that people think are garbage, and vice versa. So that's what's so fun about discussing it.
Absolutely. I feel the same way about a top five. A couple of these films I'm picking because they were just excellently made. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, I'm picking them for their entertainment value, personal to me. If I
Yes.
had fun watching, um, that's how I gauge a movie, or especially in the horror genre. So if you're tuning in, listening, watching for the first time, a little bit about the podcast for the recently deceased. We discuss movies, we do movie reviews in the horror genre, but we do other things. We do books, comics, video games, and the news. So tonight, um, top five. But before we get to the top five,
Yep.
we have to talk about those honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. I'm going to start with the Fear Street trilogy from Netflix. This was an excellent, excellent set of three movies. It was a trilogy that all came out at once 1994, 1976, 1666. There was one major A plot line it followed. You get the
Mm-hmm.
nostalgia from the 1994 movie. You get the camp slasher from the 1976 movie. The 1666 movie gives you this witch ghost story flashback, the origin of the villain, and that's
Mm-hmm.
only for the first two thirds. The final third comes back to 1994 and finishes the A plot in such and just a great movie. Um,
Yeah.
what I like most about this project is the size and the scope, and hopefully this will have paved the way for more people to do things like this. Like I want, like we have more horror TV shows, this year than we've ever had. But I want
Yep.
more. I want more horror TV. I want more trilogies. I want longer stories. And I'm going to get back to that point later on when we talk about something else. Um,
Sure.
Finally, Lamb and Antlers, and we'll talk about those two together. Um, Both creature features. Antlers took a little more to the horror, Lamb a little more art house. Um, both excellent, excellent performances, excellent characters. These are like human dramas
Yeah.
that happen to have horror elements.
That's
Um,
a great way to categorize both of these movies.
yeah, yeah. Numi Rapace blows you away in Lamb. Kerry Russell blows you away in Antlers. Um, you get more creature out of Antlers, and a little more gore and horror, but just two excellent movies that for me didn't quite make the cut.
All right, so for my honorable mentions, Nate, I'm gonna just do a rapid fire of things that I watched this past year that I think everyone should watch. Lamb is also in my honorable mention category. I'll also include a movie Censor, The Boy Behind the Door, Classic Horror Story, The Trip, and The Medium, and Candyman.
Classic horror story I would also put on my list. Was a big
Yeah.
fan. Was a big
Um,
fan.
It's great. Well, and it's funny, when we talk about the genre, I think a classic horror story, it fits the genre. It is emblematic of what a good horror movie is. It doesn't break new ground necessarily,
Right.
but the ground that it's treading, that it has been paved already, it's doing it very well and methodically, and it's executed at a level that is worth watching and is very good for the genre. It could be a movie that is a gateway to the genre for a new viewer.
Right. Right. I remember when I watched it before the big reveal, the cult reveal, and
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, it's a weirdo cult movie that I'm kind of actually enjoying. Which is funny that I say that because I really did enjoy Midsummer last year. I think it came
yeah,
out,
yeah.
and and until then, I don't think I've liked a cult-based horror movie. And
Sure.
you got
Well,
like,
how did you feel about the original Wicker Man? Did you see the original Wicker Man or just the new Nick Cage version?
yeah, just the Nick Cage version. So the
Okay, so I had originally saw the original in college at some point, and it's when you go back and you watch films that are like kind of paved the way for newer ones, it's bizarre and it's interesting because of how bizarre it is and it's weird. It doesn't give a shit about how people might feel. It's just doing its thing, and you
yeah.
got to respect that. And the original Wicker Man's definitely, as far as culty type weirdness, it's up there.
It's so funny you just said that. I watched Rosemary's Baby for the first time 6 months ago,
Yeah,
and just for me, every time I saw a scene that has been referenced by another horror movie since it,
yeah,
I'm like, so this is I knew the entire movie without ever having seen it. Every scene in
yeah.
that movie has been parodied or paid homage to throughout
Hmm.
the years by other horror movies. And I'm
Right.
watching it and I'm like, wow, I know everything. Like I don't there was no
Yeah,
surprises for me. It was very a strange experience.
yeah. And so, little caveat. The other thing too, I want to just briefly mention. You just mentioned watching Rosemary's Baby for the first time recently. This happens all the time in our genre.
Right.
There are films that people say are critically acclaimed. You should have seen this when you were born. Everyone comes across these things at different points in their life. It does not mean that you are not an aficionado or someone that appreciates the genre or is good at breaking down the genre and knowing what makes things good. This happens to all of us. We can't see everything. Sometimes it hits us later in life, sometimes earlier. Uh, Whenever you find these films, you're going to enjoy it. So just celebrate that. And who cares when you saw it? Does
Right.
not define you.
Right. Right. Okay. Honorable mentions over.
Yes.
Let's move into the top five. We'll start with my number five.
All right.
Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills is my number five, and the way I describe Halloween Kills being on my list is if this was a top 10, Halloween Kills would be number 10. um, it would be the bottom of the list if I had to make a list for 2021. I really, really enjoy Halloween Kills. I love what David Gordon Green is doing with
Mhm.
this new Halloween trilogy. And I loved Halloween 2018. Halloween Kills, fantastic. Just a fun ride the whole way. Um, this Michael Myers, the best Michael Myers we've ever had.
Mhm.
Um, and the fun and the kills, the Anthony Michael Hall character, you're playing the grown-up kid from the first movie. Um, the mob mentality angle. Sure, Jamie Lee Curtis had to sit it out, but it was she'll be back for the third one. It was just
Right.
it was just fantastic. If you scoff at the Friday, Halloween, Nightmare franchises, Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, definitely worth your time. My number
Mhm.
five.
Absolutely. Great film. Loved watching it in the theater. Had a lot of fun with it. My top five is something that you threw into your honorable mentions, which is just fine with me. In my top five, my number five is Antlers. So with Antlers, one of the things that for me edges it into my top five in a similar fashion to your Halloween Kills inclusion is for me, it's been so long since there's been a creature feature that's worthy of discussion or viewing. And so because this kind of satisfied that, I was so in love with it. On top of the fact that it was done in a very artful manner through the cinematography, through the limited scope of the characters, and the incredible acting that took place between Kerry Russell, Jesse Plemons, but also the child actor that plays the lead protagonist, Jeremy T. Thomas. Possibly one of the best performances of the year through this little kid. It's a great film. The
He was
setting of
he
it, the
was
way that they
excellent.
handle the lore, he was. The way that they handle the lore, I think that Scott Cooper embodying Guillermo del Toro in this just hit all the right notes with it. It just, it's not, again, it's not an Academy Award winning movie. It's just that it's a great representation of the genre and this subgenre of horror film, of monster creature feature film that I have to include it because I think it's just done so well. Uh, it hits all the right notes. I will rewatch it at some point, and the story is just it's presented authentically, it's executed at a high level, and it wraps up in a really good resolution that I think it's you should be watching it
Oh
if
yeah,
you're into horror. Yeah.
fingers crossed for a sequel.
All right. Sure thing. All right. So we're gonna go into my number four.
Yep.
For me, my number four is going to be called it's Coming Home in the Dark. So Coming Home in the Dark, I came into completely knowing anything about the plot. I believe it's currently on. It could be on Netflix. I could be wrong. It's on a streaming platform. And Coming Home in the Dark gave me the feels that were similar to Eden Lake. Eden Lake has been long discussed and it's been out for a long time. Eden Lake is a Michael Fassbender project. I can't remember the female lead in it with him, but Eden Lake kind of has a idyllic couples retreat that an event transpires where from that moment forward you are immensely uncomfortable during the film. And Coming Home in the Dark brought all of those emotions back up in me whenever I watched it. Early on, an event takes place where the antagonists are presented, and the whole film it's just long drawn out discomfort of how they are interacting with the leads in the film, and it's done uniquely. And the dude that plays the bad guy in this, I want to say this is James at no, that's the writer, Daniel Gillies, I think. Yeah, Daniel Gillies is the lead bad dude in this, and he is amazing. He hits every note that you would want to see in a villain in a film, where he's just dark and his delivery is like he's in this dude's skin. It's super uncomfortable, well done story that has a good conclusion by the end of it. That all makes sense and it doesn't go too awry with how the narrative is progressing. And so, Coming Home in the Dark, really good watch. Thriller-esque horror movie with limited characters. Thumbs up.
Okay. My number four. You can check it on Netflix. Blood Red Sky. Now, this was a foreign film, subtitled. It is a vampire-esque movie. I like it when they take vampires and they kind of, it's obviously fantastical, but they take the supernatural out of it and they break it down to science, right? So she's got some disease. She loses all her hair. Her skin goes pale. She's sensitive to sun. She grows these fangs, and not fangs, like all her teeth are jagged, and she craves blood. She's on a flight with her son, and all she cares about is getting to where she's going to set up her son, because she believes she'll be dead very very soon. To get her son set up. So there's also a doctor with an experimental treatment at the end of the where she's going, but she's making plans for her son's future. Uh, there's a group of vampires on the plane. They hijack the plane. They have their own agenda, and the amount of suspense, tension. There's a decent amount of action, more towards the end. She has to fight these vampires. It's a vampire v vampires is always a great concept. Add the plane. There's lots of stakes. It's a high stakes horror thriller. Um, Really good movie. Definitely worth checking out. That'll take
Awesome.
us. Yeah, yeah, it was great. That will take us to my number three, which I believe was on your honorable mentions, and that
Okay.
is Candyman.
Yeah.
Um, so first, I love Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
And he did write this, but he did not direct it. This was
Mm-hmm.
directed by Nita DaCosta, who did an amazing job. The camera work during the kills, the camera work in general was, I thought, was very inspired for this film that took like Chicago's art world. You got the main character is a photographer. His girlfriend is a um, what's the word? A
She's like a
curator.
curator of
She's like a
sorts.
curator.
And
Yes.
while he, I will correct you a little bit without stepping on your toes. He is a
Oh,
painter.
that's right. He's a
He's
painter. That's
he's
right.
photographing
Right.
the green
The
to
Cabrini Green.
inspire his
Yes,
work.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
He goes to Cabrini Green, which we remember from the first film. So what I like about this, not only was it a great movie, but it was a direct sequel to the first movie, kind of throwing out all of the bad sequels in the Candyman franchise, which is kind of what Halloween 2018 did. Um,
Yep.
and was just a great movie. I mean, there's not much more to say. If I had a pet peeve, I would say there was a little too much computer graphics in the blood work. I'm not a big fan of CG in general. Like, I just prefer the animatronics and or practical effects. Um,
Yeah.
but that being said, I still enjoyed myself immensely and was not ever taken out of this movie.
Yeah. So Candyman was not one that I had seen through most of the year. I just didn't prioritize it, and then it wasn't until you really referenced that this had more of like merit to it that I did finally watch it, and it barely did not make my top five. It was
Right.
amazing. It was very good. I loved the art world thing. I have a man. I went through school for fine art, and so I could relate and appreciate a lot of that. There are certain things that an art student would get. The critic that he goes and talks with throughout the movie, as at his opening, and then as he goes and has a conversation with. she has two Josef Albers prints in her studio, and she might have some Rothkos in her hallway. So there's little nods to the art world that are in there that I was like, this is great. It kind of like hit the geek in me. But it did that world really well, and it was also interesting to see um, the African American element of it kind of existing there, but also there being this other niche of the art world with an African American leads, where the critic was saying, "Oh, this is because you people are all the same," and he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she's like, "Artists," and they kind of are tongue in cheek, walking that line about what is it that is inappropriate about a certain group of people, and I think it's super entertaining. The CGI blood didn't bother me so much. I wasn't pulled out of it. I noticed it a few times, but the camera work, especially to your point, amazing, because a lot of the mirrors with the Candyman mythos is in there, and the way that they see it,
Oh yeah.
it heightens the tension and the look of the movie. It was awesome. I
Right.
wanted to talk to you about it because I had a feeling that you were going to bring it up, and I almost in the top 5 for me. It was awesome.
Yeah, I love how it the first Candyman is already a ghost story and turns the main character into a ghost story by the end. She becomes an urban legend, and this movie does the same thing. It kind of redefines Candyman as well, as he's not a monster in a slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of makes these legends. That's what he does,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and like people talk about when things getting remade, and I feel like this is a re-envisioning or a broadening of the story that works and makes sense, and it's validated, it's earned. I don't think it cheapens it in any kind of way, which happens a lot with people rebooting franchises. They fall flat in their face.
Right.
RoboCop reboot sucked. Total
Sucked.
Recall
Total
reboot
Recall reboot
sucked.
sucked. I also really loved the shadow puppets.
Oh yeah, yeah, that
Yeah, yeah.
art that part
So
was
very
excellent.
cool
Cool little art thing.
transition
Yep.
scenes. Yeah. So that was my three. So we're on to you.
All right, my number 3 is going to be coming in a little film called The Queen of Black Magic. This is an Indonesian film currently on Shudder. Subscribe to Shudder. Amazing niche horror films released on the reg through this service. Get it through Amazon Prime, which everyone probably has anyways. I highly recommend. The Queen of Black Magic focuses around the story of orphans that are now grown adults that are coming back to the orphanage to celebrate the or to care for or to visit the caretaker of the orphanage because he's kind of ailing. What comes to transpire while they're at this visit, when everyone is gathered, are a series of events that kind of expose the hidden truths of what happened in this orphanage as they're growing up, where everyone's dark secrets and now are exposed. And this is a body horror movie, foreign body horror movie that hits all the right notes. This is a remake of a film that came out in the years past, in the 70s, I believe. And it's just done magnificently. The actors are all good. And I find in a lot of foreign films, the acting you don't pick apart as bad often because it just seems genuine, or maybe they're just good. You don't see as many fake characters that are bad at acting in a foreign film as you do in an American film, in my experience. So this is excellent because of that. Everyone's spot on. The story is awesome, and by the end of it, you are rooting for the bad guy, the Queen of Black Magic. You want to see her exact revenge or vengeance on the characters from what transpired in this orphanage years ago. And it's awesome. It's really cool, a lot of fun, and it's something that I don't think everyone's going to be seeing or rushing out to see throughout the year. So I highly recommend people see The Queen of Black Magic.
All right.
Um, so then we're going to be leading into number 2 then, yeah? And I'll start off.
Yeah, that's right. Number two. Here we go.
All right, my number 2. And this was difficult for me because number 1 and 2 are like this. But my number 2 is going to be The Nighthouse.
Awesome.
So yes.
And I'm going to stop you right there and say that my number two is also the Nighthouse. So let's talk about it.
Hey, all right.
Let's talk
So yeah,
about
the Night
the
House. What
Nighthouse.
I think I knew nothing about the Night House whenever I heard about it. It was on the list of things that I wanted to watch, and I had dozens of films I wanted to watch, and I plugged this one early on into my watching of all these films, and I was everything that came after it was not as good. This film was that perfect.
Yes, I totally agree. If I didn't absolutely love my number one pick as much as I do, this would be the number one. This was so close to
I
number
agree.
one. This is definitely, we're talking about performances, writing, directing, story. This this is almost the best horror movie of the year.
Absolutely.
This is the best horror film of the year. My number one pick
Yes.
is more of a movie.
Yes.
Like I said, for entertainment purposes,
Hmm.
this uh, film was excellent.
Absolutely. This is obviously carried by the writing, but the performance of Rebecca Hall in this film is what makes it. She is magnificent. Uh, Rebecca Hall plays a grieving widow whose husband just passed from a suicide. She is in the grieving process, and as is natural, one starts to seek answers to unanswerable questions in this moment of life. And she plays the grieving widow so perfectly. You feel for her, everything that she's going through, it makes sense. Alcohol plays a huge role, and she becomes sort of a unreliable narrator because of that, where the events that start to happen, you're like, is she just getting blackout drunk and this isn't happening? Or it is happening and it's just heightened, and she has more liquid courage to do the crazy shit that she starts doing in this film to uncover the truth of her dead husband. It's everything about this is just fun. The symbolism that's in there, the iconography of the different things that she discovers
Oh yeah,
looking through her husband's stuff,
the
it
maze,
builds a world. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the reverse house.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like so
Yeah,
like
he's an architect, and so everything, and that's the thing. Oh yeah, you talk about the reverse house. We the architecture and the way that the camera work
right.
reveals
Oh, oh
it.
yeah.
It brings up and heightens it. We talked about immersion. This film immerses you in the story in every way possible.
Oh yeah. You are definitely a fly on the wall in this movie. You're in the rooms with her. It fully engrosses you. You know, turn off the lights. You know, watch it
Mm.
alone if you can, so you're not disturbed. It is like a nearly perfect horror movie.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another film that I will say I see on a lot of people's top tens. That
Right.
doesn't persuade me one way or the other whenever I go to consider what for me is the best. Um, I like we both had watched this and we just knew it
Oh,
wasn't. It has had.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I didn't go. I wonder if that's going to be in my top five. I was like, what slot is that going to take in my top
yeah,
five?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
There was,
And
yeah, no
and
doubt about it.
I can't be 100% certain, but I'm thinking back, and this reminds me of one other movie, and I'll mention it in a second. But I don't think that this film utilized any blood per se.
I mean,
You know,
it it
like
didn't. There wasn't
as
like
like a device
gore,
to right.
but there was
Like, and
the
I don't even know
bloody
if there was
footprints
okay, right,
on the
but that's
yeah
it,
yeah
which is harmless.
yeah.
And so for a film to have this amount of tension and suspense and to not have any kind of graphic over the top in your face
Oh
like
yeah.
horror death type stuff, it's an excellent story. There's one film that I will reference as like a little parenthetical annotation if I were writing a paper would be to watch The Skeptic. The
The
Skeptic
skeptic.
has similar feelings. I can't remember the name of the lead, Tom Arnold plays a sub character in this film. He's the comic relief,
Okay.
well earned. But The Skeptic is a good ghost story that just has great storytelling and is a great story. And The Nighthouse is in the same kind of wheelhouse that
Okay.
with that. Excellent. So good viewing related to The Nighthouse. If you like The Nighthouse, you will love The Skeptic.
All right. With our number two being the same, that brings me to my number one. And that is James Wan's Malignant.
Oh, awesome. Also, my number one.
It was so fun and just so good. Earned jump scares, creepy atmosphere, kept me guessing. I guessed wrong. Uh, it was so good. Um, what I also like about it is that people seem to either love it or hate it. There is no in between. I like polarizing films, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because probably everything I love about this movie is what the people who hate it hate about it.
Yeah, that's what's so ridiculous about this is that there are things that to me is like this is amazing because of this, and someone is writing, I hated it because it seems so stupid. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the point.
that's the point. Like, this starts off with a flashback that feels like it was shot in the 70s, and guess what?
Uh,
It is like it's set in the 70s, and it feels like it
yeah,
was, you know. And then it
it's
comes,
so self-aware
it's
and it's
so it's
so
yeah,
obvious.
yeah, and then it comes back to the present, and we're watching this woman who's pregnant get abused by her husband, who gets killed by a specter, a ghost. We don't know, and then we know it's James Wan, so we're like, oh sweet, we're on the haunted house
Yeah,
train again. Okay, Conjuring, um, the further from Insidious, right?
right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what supernatural elements are we gonna get this time around? And you know, you're wrong. Like, that's not what it is, but
yeah,
it it feels like it is for most of the ride. Um, the kills, the action, the gore, it's all fantastic. It's all over the top. There's even a wire fu sequence, which is probably like the best couple minutes. And when I say couple minutes,
mm,
I'm not exaggerating. The scene is a couple minutes long. Like,
yeah.
you
Of
just
just
don't see
brawling.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't see this kind of stuff in horror at all. Not, I wouldn't even say
mm,
anymore. You just don't see it at all, and it
right.
was over the top in such a perfect way that it never felt like stupid or ridiculous to me, and I was in like full like enjoyment, eyes wide open mode through the entire film.
Yeah, and whenever we talked about it with The Night House, it's like that was a film and this is a movie. There are ways that you can handle the genre where it is just fun. Trick or Treat, when I talked about it earlier, it's a fun movie. You're going to watch it because it's Halloween and you love this movie. It's horror and it gets you in the mood to be watching the stuff and thinking about it. And so Malignant is just entertaining, but it has all of the horror elements that keep it more interesting for that genre. And it's so yeah, it being so self-aware to me is it's fun and funny to think about it because James Wan is known for having very serious movies. When you're talking about Insidious and the Conjuring series, they're really set in a real world where through cinematography and through story and through acting, they want to tell a very carefully crafted plot to evoke lots of emotion in a certain kind of serious manner. And Malignant is just turning that on its head, breaking the fourth wall almost, because it's so apparent that they're lampooning a lot of these kinds of genres. And when I see people talk about it in a way that they're think it's dumb or it's silly, I'm just confused as to why they don't get the joke.
Right.
It
That
just seems so obvious to me.
I love that you brought that up. Do you remember Snakes on a Plane?
Yeah,
I
right.
felt the same way about Snakes on a Plane. I walked out of the theater. that was so funny. I loved it. It was a hilarious ride. And everybody was like, "That movie's terrible, blah blah blah." No, it was bad on purpose. It was self-aware and it
Yeah,
took itself seriously, and that's what made it so good.
right. And it's almost as if James Wan was aware that he was going to be doing this. Like it was a, going to the line of scrimmage and calling an audible type thing where people talk about how the trailers made it seem like this. And then I went to the movie expecting this, and I got that, and I hate that. That wasn't fair.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that's even cooler
Yeah.
that he intentionally, and it could be a couple things. It could be that the studio said we're going to cut this trailer and it's going to look like this because we want people to see it and we don't trust your vision.
Right. We want to
It
sell
could have been that,
tickets. We're not going to
or it could have been
advertise.
that.
We're not going to advertise a tumor monster because
Right?
no one's paying to
Yeah,
see that
no.
movie.
Right? Yeah, we get it. We saw Basket Case. We know Kuatu. We get
Yeah,
it.
we
This
get
is
it.
dumb. But it's just it's interesting. There's not a lot of movies that I can think of in recent past that have this kind of that are dealt with in this fashion. That it knows what it's doing, and I feel like this happened more in the '80s, a little bit in the '90s, and not a lot since.
Right.
Outside of straight horror comedies that are
Right.
intentionally making fun.
Right.
Um, yeah, I will have to I'd have to think about it for a while to try to come up with things because in this hits it and that's it's like I feel like we've said it before. Maybe when we talked about it as a review, it's a maybe we've talked about it a few times. It's a horror fans horror movie.
Right.
Someone that knows the genre will
Exactly.
get it and will love it.
Exactly. My number one, the regular people out there are not going to enjoy it. Or our
Right.
number one, I should say.
Hmm.
This was made for us. Like that, you hear the term a comedian's comic.
Right.
And
Sure.
yeah, it's the same with Malignant, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up comedies, horror comedies at the end there, because let's talk about horror comedies.
All right.
We can't, you can't put them on a list. Like sometimes they're
Yeah,
good and
oftentimes they can't. They just
yeah, like they can't be the best of the year. They can be the best horror
right.
comedy of the year, and I think almost like the honorable mentions, I made a small list of four movies that I wanted to just mention. Slacks, which is on Shudder, an
Mhm.
excellent horror comedy about fast fashion where these pants kill people. Um, I mean, I don't have to say much more
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
drive you to watch it. I'm fairly certain. Um, I
Yeah.
also really,
Absurdity.
oh yeah, like completely absurd. And
Yeah.
love
A la
love
rubber.
the Bollywood references were good too. Was just a
Mm.
big fan. Yeah, a la Rubber.
Yeah.
Um, Willy's Wonderland, Nick Cage's
Mhm.
movie that is loosely, well, almost exactly based on Five Nights at Freddy's. Um,
Right.
he doesn't have a single line of dialogue in the movie, and it is fantastic.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want Nick Cage to talk, but they did a great job of, a campy action horror movie. And Nick
Hmm.
Cage is just killing it right now, right? Mandy, Mom
Yeah.
and Dad, Color Out of Space. I would put Willy's Wonderland on that list. I haven't watched Pig yet, but it's on my list. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Top two. Number two, horror comedy of the year. Werewolf Within. Definitely
Hmm.
Werewolf Within. Which you have seen?
I didn't see it.
Okay.
Werewolves Within. I know based on a video game, which to me is like, what the hell? But
Yeah,
okay.
I
Uh,
remember seeing the logo when the credits rolled, and I was like, "What is happening? What
Ubisoft, right?
Ubisoft?
Yeah.
What did I
Yeah.
just watch?" But it was a great movie. It wasn't it this now. So this is the opposite of camp. This was incredibly intelligently written. All the jokes
Mm.
are highbrow for the most part.
Right.
It stars well, one of the uh, side characters is Guillermo, played by Guillermo from
Right,
What We
what we
Do in
do in the shadows.
Shadows. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's great in it. The two leads are fantastic. You have African American comic who you might recognize if you're into comedy. He's kind of breaking in right now, getting bit roles in comedies all over the place. And the female lead is was it the Verizon or AT&T? She was on some cell phone commercial and is pretty popular for it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It
I
was
want to
actually
say
great to
I
see
can't.
her in a feature. I think this is the first time I've seen her, and she was fantastic. Both of them very funny together. Yeah, really, really great comedy. Which brings us to the horror comedy of the year, and this is bar none, Psycho Goreman. Just completely absurd, reminiscent of even like the Power Rangers at times in the
Absolutely.
costumes and the action sequences. Um, the dialogue is all tongue-in-cheek one-liners. I mean, the gore is over the top and really bad, like not realistic to play into the comedy even more. Um, just really great, really unexpected. Like Rod said about the Nighthouse not having it being on the radar at all and just popping up. That's kind of what happened for me with Psycho Goreman. I had no idea until I saw the Blu-ray just sitting there, and I just had to take it home with me just from the cover art. And and I
Yeah.
so and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and I definitely won bringing that thing home.
Yeah, no, Psycho Gorman was a ton of fun. It hits the absurdity, the visuals being like as lame as they are, oftentimes, just makes it even that much more ridiculous and absurd to enjoy it. And so, for me, it's that the lead character was kind of like a bit silly. I don't think she hit the right note all the time, but for the most part, her interacting with Psycho Gorman was just over the top and hilarious. And a lot of the scenes where the adults were interacting with it because they're kind of like leading normal parents with all this absurd shit happening kind of had hilarious moments where the guy's in the bathroom and Psycho Gorman comes through and he's talking to him while he's there and he's like freaking out like ah
Yeah.
it was over the top hilariousness and the the fact that they're playing that weird dodgeball game that they made up to resolve the conclusion of the movie
Yeah.
and the fact that they sing that song "You're the Heckin' Best."
Yeah.
uh, it's just it was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it was like a perfect meld of like, because it's a brother sister story. It's like a family movie meets campy B horror in like this great way. And yeah,
Yeah,
it was executed perfectly for what it was, and definitely a must watch if you are into the horror comedy genre. Absolutely.
for sure.
All right, horror comedy being done will bring us to sequels. We already mentioned
Hmm.
Halloween Kills. There was the third Conjuring this year.
Yeah,
There was which I think was the weakest of the three. I'd probably say
yeah.
two, one, three, which is a pattern for a lot of trilogies, right? Original
Hmm.
Star Wars trilogy, two, one, three, definitely, right?
That's fair.
Got to throw that in there.
Yeah,
Candyman, a reboot sequel.
right.
Halloween Kills, which we already mentioned. Don't Breathe 2 was an out of nowhere sequel this year, and it was good. If you like the first movie, you'll like the second movie. I can only describe it as more of the same, um, but still
Hmm.
definitely worth the watch. Very good movie. Uh, so I put Halloween Kills as fifth on my list, but I can't call it my favorite sequel, and I have to give it to this movie because of what it did for the first film, and
Okay.
that is Quiet Place 2. So
Sure.
right,
Right.
right.
I
So
forgot about Quiet Place too.
right. So Quiet Place 2 was excellent, right? But it makes and I liked the first one, of course. I definitely think the second one is a stronger movie. Um, it's unfortunate Krasinski, didn't died at the end, and we couldn't see him as the protagonist of Quiet Place 2. But we do get a little of him in the flashback. Emily Blunt,
Yeah.
fantastic. The guy from Peaky Blinders who plays the Scarecrow in The Dark Knight, I can never remember this guy's name. Uh,
Yeah, he's got a weird name. Something with a C is in there.
Yeah, yeah, he was the villain in Sunshine, which another of like my favorite one of my favorite sci-fi horror movies. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, so Quiet Place 2, and as I mentioned when I was talking about the size and scope of the Fear Street trilogy, what I like about Quiet Place 2 is it literally picks up like right after the first movie ended. We also
Hmm.
get the flashback. Um, But if you took the flashback and you put it before the first movie, and then you watch the first movie, and then you watch what's left of the second movie, I think you have an amazing, 3.5 hour uh, horror film, like an
Yeah.
epic. I feel sad that it didn't happen that way, and that maybe someone should try it. Um, you know, Fear Street, they dropped the
It's
they,
insane. It's an insane idea.
yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
know this.
Fear Street dropped the trilogy, right? And the way people are watching TV and
Right. That's
binging on
fair.
Netflix right now, like you, I watched all three of them like in the same sitting. So,
Yeah, okay.
so Quiet Place could have been, a 3.5, 4 hour epic instead of um, two films. And in my mind, not that's where I'm coming from when I say it was definitely the best sequel this year.
Yeah, I think that I've seen a lot of people. Well, I've seen a few people list it as one of their top tens for the year,
Yeah,
and I
it is
won't
on
go
a lot
that
of
far.
lists.
I won't go that far because it's good, but I mean it's not. It's good to me. I'm not gonna knock it for a lot of things, but the world that they built in the first movie, they really kind of dig into. And there's a lot more tension. The stakes are higher because you can see like light at the end of the tunnel. They dangle the idyllic end game of what these people can finally find on this island, but invariably, life finds a way, and things
But
do not go properly. Uh, and it's yeah, it was amazing. The flashback scene, I agree, was wonderfully done. It gave you more stakes for what was happening now. It made it the ending of the first film with Krasinski's passing that more impactful because you saw how perfectly suited he was to kind of take charge and handle shit for them, and to now be absent of him, how do they go on, and everything that means for his children and how they're coping and how they're coming into their own. It was a great movie, and together they make a great story for sure.
yeah. Um, okay. So most overrated, biggest disappointment. Um,
Sure.
I I wish you had seen this movie so that we could
Right?
have a
Yeah, yeah, I know.
yeah.
Well, and I wish I did too. Like, I did prioritize it, and then when I was like, it's too late. I'm not gonna bother.
It's okay.
It's on people's top.
I know, and it's sad, and it's sad. Last night in Soho, biggest disappointment of the year. Um, okay, first, that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. That just means it was overhyped and it was classified in horror when it tips toes the line, and in my opinion, psychological thrillers should probably not be classified as horror. Um,
Yeah.
so Edgar Wright, I love Edgar Wright. Spaced, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz is
Hmm.
one of my favorite horror comedies of all time. Which I don't know, horror comedy, slasher comedy, right? Uh,
Right.
the At World's End, right? Um, so so I'm excited to see this movie, and then I get the hype, and I'm even more excited to see this movie. Um, and it was such a letdown. Now, beautifully directed. The set design, the transitions, the camera work, everything you would expect from an Edgar Wright directed film. Um,
Yeah.
the but you've seen it before a million times. Like the script, which I don't know if it was written by Edgar Wright or not. In my opinion, lacked originality. The only thing that was original about it was that the characters were based on um, uh, they were fashion students. So you just took a story that we've seen 100 times before, and you just made them fashion students. Um, so sorry, we just got a chat ting.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
Edgar Wright did
he did write it?
write
Yeah,
this. The screenplay was someone else, but yeah, he had a role to play in the story he was telling.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the twist is also very obvious. I mean, it is in what I would call typical uh, uh, of the genre. So if you're a horror fan, um, you're gonna know what's going on every step of the way. Um, I can understand how people, how your average person, your not horror geek, would um, would be taken to this movie. It's very
Sure.
pretty.
Yeah.
The performances are great. Matt Smith, Anna Taylor Joy. I don't
Hmm.
know who played the lead, but she was excellent. Um, and yeah, it was just lackluster. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. It felt tired. It felt like a rerun. Um, Also, his use of music, I understand it because he's very like visual, right? And so when you add
Right.
you add music, the music he used, it's like here's a music video, here's a music video, here's a music video, and
Yeah. Well, and it was all modern music you were saying, right? Like newer tracks.
no, 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 it was all 60s, like
Okay, pop music, known,
psych rock, like yeah, yeah, it was all songs you
but known
knew.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and
I
and then
hate when
like
films do that. Like
yeah.
it feels like it's jamming in, or like it's taking over for the storytelling in some kind of way, or it just the imbalance of the artistic decision to use this because it's going to enhance the scene versus I just want this cool fucking song in my movie. It's just it doesn't always work.
Right. And he definitely made pretty pictures,
Hmm.
with pretty sounds. I'm not denying that. When you put it all together, it just didn't work out for me.
Sure.
Did you have a
So
biggest disappointment?
yeah, I mean, for me, there's two films, and I don't know how well viewed they're going to be with our audience, but there were two that came across that I saw on a lot of couple different lists. One is Violation, and the other is what did I want to include with Violation? Lucky.
Oh,
So
lucky, right.
they're both they're similar in the sense that they deal with a certain perspective on um, sexual trauma or um, hmm, the one with Lucky is almost as if it's sort of like a Me Too thing where this woman, the female lead, the character has events happening to her where there's a stalker and people just kind of handle it casually where they either don't believe her or just believe her and go along with it like, yeah, but this is happening. Of course, this is the person that's coming to kill us every night. And
Hmm.
it's like handled like it's like everyone knows this and it's just like no one cares type attitude where it's blasé. And Violation was like a thing that occurred to this woman and now she's seeking vengeance and it's big ideas but the execution of the idea is not as interesting as the idea and it's not doing anything new to the narrative. It's just sort of like hitting the same note over and over again and you just kind of watch it and see it to the end.
Right,
And
right.
so it just was I heard a lot about them and I was excited to watch them and they were just a bit of a letdown. It's a neat idea, but there's only so much that they do with the idea until you're kind of just disinterested because nothing's elevating it. It's sort of just hitting the same kind of thing over and over, and you sit through it, and it's not that as interesting. Similar to how you know Lamb has sort of a one note type thing about grief and loss and things like that, but it's more engaging in that setting than these two films are. So
Sure,
for
sure.
me, that's what the biggest hype and letdown was. I was expecting big things because everyone that I was seeing talking about it said it was really awesome. Not so much.
Right. Okay. With biggest disappointment or most overrated behind us,
Hmm.
we'll move on to the best performance. And I think you agree, hands down, Rebecca Hall, The Nighthouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Great writing, great directing, as we said before, but Rebecca Hall carries the movie
Hmm.
the whole way. If it was somebody else, I don't know. Like, still becomes a great movie,
Yeah,
but is it this number two on the list if it's not Rebecca Hall? I doubt it, based on
yeah.
what I saw.
Well, in horror films in general, a lot of times I think that you agree, the ones that are usually really, really good, they infrequently have a well known A list actor in them.
Right.
Usually, as someone that is not A list and it might not even be known.
True.
And it allows them to maybe elevate the role or to really get into it and to showcase their own talents. And so Rebecca Hall might be like recently the most known actor that is in a role that is carrying it in this genre that I could think of. It just doesn't happen as often. And yeah, the scenes that she's in almost every scene. You
Oh yeah.
know, it really is about her, and she carries it daftly. It's so well done, and it is the writing, but her delivery of everything that's happening, and
Oh.
the other people that are supporting her are also done very well. And there's scenes like we talked, I think, in private about the bar scene that happens early on in the movie
Right.
that seems genuine and natural and but uncomfortable. You align with the other supporting actors where you want to ask her what she's thinking and what she's feeling. You want to know these, have answers to these questions. Uh, she's just processing. She's throwing them back, and she's just trying to get things out there. And she doesn't even want to think about it. Doesn't know how to deal with it. Doesn't know what to do with anything. And things happen during that whole scene, and it's just a really she is just excellent in it. It's there's not a lot else to say. It's
Yeah. I love in the very beginning when the kid's mom comes in to talk to her
oh
about
sure.
the C she got in spelling or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
And her, as we mentioned before, her husband just killed himself, so she just does not give a fuck. And the scene is just like, when she, as soon as the mom walks in and she's like disappointed and going to talk about her
Right.
son, your heart just sinks and you're like, oh, this is
Yeah,
what
she's got to
is
deal with this garbage now.
yeah, she's got to do
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But written so well, like handled perfectly, like it was so good.
Yeah. If it were a different actor in that role, it very well could have been a flop easily.
Yes.
Um, Outside of her performance, which is obviously a standout, I will mention two movies: The Jinn, and The Boy Behind the Door.
Right.
There is a actor named Ezra Dewey that was in both of those who was excellent, but in The Boy Behind the Door, the lead of that was Lonnie Chavis, and he was excellent. There's child actors aside from the kid from Antlers, who's also great. Child actors, it can't be easy to do these kind of movies where they're still, you're a kid, you're trying to figure things out. They're excellent, where you don't see it as a kid acting, you see it as the character in the film, and both of those movies did a good job. The actors in that role did a great job at keeping you in the story and not being distracted by kid acting, which Psycho Gorman does from time to time, where it's like kid acting ridiculous. It looks like a kid acting.
Yeah.
Those films are more like this is an actor, not a kid
Sure.
acting. So
Right.
kudos to them.
Okay. And the last topic before we discuss what's going to happen next week, we have TV. And
Yeah.
for me, there was a lot of great TV this year. For me, it was Chucky. And for the similar reasons to Malignant, it was just fun. The gore was outrageous and unexpected. The comedy was perfectly written. Lots of kid actors and
Hmm.
touchy subjects, and it never rammed any of its of its social commentary down your throat. It was all just like very even poked fun at it a little some of the
Hmm.
times.
Hmm.
Um, just an excellent series. Can't wait for season two. Um, yeah, watch Chucky if you haven't.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good one. To your point, yeah, it does have the same kind of feels um, as to why it was elevated when other things weren't. For me, my favorite TV series is currently on Netflix, and that's Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass is the film version of a TV series where Chucky is the movie version
The
of a
movie
TV
version,
series in horror.
yeah, it's the Nighthouse.
It's like it's our yes, it's the Nighthouse of the TV genre. It is excellent. Um, there's so much going on in it that you don't want to talk about details because it's an experience. You just have to watch it. There's a lot of religion into it that could throw some viewers off. Um,
That is the only reason I haven't put it on yet. Is the word mass is talking about a church event, not Massachusetts, right?
correct.
So
Yes.
so that's my assumption, and I've heard it's great, and I know I will watch it. But the
Yeah.
reason I keep dumping it down to the bottom of my list is because you know Exorcist type movies,
Hmm.
any kind of ghost story that's like heavily saturated in religion. I usually roll my eyes at. You
Yeah,
know,
for sure. I don't feel dissimilar to that. But I can say that this movie elevates things. Uh, it does have similar feels to one of the characters at least does have similar feels to The Mist,
oh,
where the religion aspect in The Mist kind of for me ruins The Mist.
oh,
In
sure,
Midnight for me, in Midnight Mass, it does not feel like that. It is handled more craftily. And I will say every character in Midnight Mass is top notch.
okay, yeah,
They're
yeah.
excellent at what they do.
I know I'm watching it.
It's like watching Shakespeare. Everyone is just they know their lines, they know their role, they know how to evoke what they're supposed to evoke for their character, and it's all meaningful and impactful. The biggest complaint, from what I've seen, people that dislike Midnight Mass dislike it because of the dialogue or monologues that take place, of which there are many. Similar to a Tarantino movie, this
Sure.
spends 10 minutes at a time, oftentimes, just two people talking.
Right, right. Which is what I love
But
about
it's so
Tarantino.
well written.
Yeah, it's what I
Yeah.
love about Tarantino movies.
So be
Okay.
prepared,
Maybe I'll
but
jump
it
it up
is
to the top
amazing.
of my list.
It's a slow burn, for sure.
Sure.
It is so amazing, though. Absolutely.
Okay. Um, so there you have it. A quick recap. Halloween Kills.
Absolutely. Oh, the recap Halloween
Yeah.
Kills. My number five, Antlers. Absolutely.
Number four, Blood Red Sky.
Coming Home in the Dark.
Number three, Candyman.
The Queen of Black Magic.
And both of our number two, The Nighthouse. And
Hmm.
number
And our
one,
number one, Malignant.
the must-see horror movie of 2021 is definitely Malignant and The Nighthouse. I just
Yeah.
have to, it's both of them, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, so next week, oh, actually this Friday, I believe, Scream 5, but it's actually just
Hmm.
called Scream, comes
No.
out. So we are going to see it before Tuesday. We are going to talk about it on Tuesday, 8 o'clock. Um, we are going to take a second and watch the trailer. You want to watch the trailer?
Absolutely, I want to watch the
You
trailer.
you have the Twitch up, right?
I've got the Twitch up.
All right, here we go.
There's certain rules to surviving. Believe me, I know. They always come back. The killer is a part of something in the past. This one just feels different.
You're all in danger.
Mom? With
Sydney. I've seen this movie before.
not this movie.
You said we were gonna finish this. Go finish it, Sydney.
Scream.
I'll be right back.
He's dead.
Only in theaters. Special previews Thursday at 7 p.m. Get tickets now.
Here are the most anticipated movies.
All right.
Yeah.
Love the two callbacks, like right in a row. The opening of the fridge, closing the door.
Yeah.
That was from Scream 1. That was, I
Yep.
believe, where Rose McGowan's character got stuck in the dog door in the garage. And then the Matthew Lillard. I'll
Right.
be right back.
Yeah, you definitely did. Super excited to watch it. Anxious because I want to watch all the other ones before it happens. I'm probably not gonna, but I want to. It's been so long since I've seen them.
Yeah.
It should still be amazing, regardless.
So I just watched 1 and 2 in the last couple days.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll get to watch 3 and 4. I'll probably read a quick recap on Wiki about them, just so I remember the storylines before I go into 5. So the trailer, it looks like every Scream trailer I've ever seen.
Right. Yeah.
I am definitely excited about it. It's we're getting a lot of nostalgia these days.
Right.
And it's so it's not Wes Craven. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Right.
Like in his the end of his career, right? In his age, I think I heard during a David Gordon Green interview though, he's doing music now.
Yeah.
Yeah, with his son, for films like soundtracks.
Right.
And he did the music for Halloween, the new Halloweens. So that's awesome. So if we look at Tyler Gillette and Matt Bettinelli Olpin's
Yep.
their track record, so he did Ready or Not, which I really loved. Good
Yeah.
horror comedy. Looks like he did the original, or he did one of the segments in VHS. Looks like the Halloween segment.
Yep.
And then some TV. Matt Olpin did Ready or Not, did VHS. Okay, so they're a duo. And I mean, just from the success of Ready or Not, like, I'm in. I mean, that means these guys are probably our age. Grew up with Scream the way we did, so I'll put my trust in them for now.
Yeah, Ready or Not, I thought was an excellent movie. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun.
How about that ending?
Everything about it was entertaining. And this is something that, like, someone that's new to horror, you can watch it and you can kind of get into it because it's not going to exclude someone from the way that it handles whatever it's talking about. It was fun.
Yeah, definitely a fun movie. good suspense and no
Mhm.
kills until the end. Or not no kills. There were the accidental kills when they were when the family was trying to kill um, what's her name? The Margot Robbie lookalike, who I
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
who I like more than Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
From the babysitter.
Samara Weaving.
Samara Weaving, yes, Samara Weaving. From the babysitter and Guns Akimbo and Mayhem. Uh,
Hmm.
she has she has so many great movies under her belt already. Um, yeah, I love Samara Weaving. She can definitely do no wrong. But Ready or Not, yes, just a great movie. Very funny, very tense. So yeah, I think they could handle a Scream because Scream was funny, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
wasn't, but it wasn't in the horror comedy genre, nor would you put it in the horror comedy genre, but it was still a funny movie.
Hmm.
The characters definitely didn't take their mortality seriously in
Right. Yeah.
in the
And I
way
mean,
that,
it was fun. Hmm.
yeah, just fun.
Like it's interesting because it is sort of like a high schooler type movie to see,
Oh
and
sure,
so the thing about that's interesting. I wonder. I don't think that there's a ton of movies being made now that are slashery that target high schoolers now. Aside from the TV shows that we just watched, being Chucky,
right,
middle school, and I Know What You Did Last Summer from Amazon, which
right,
was high school into college.
yeah.
I can't think of a recent horror or slasher that has that kind of demographic. Aside from, I think the only one that I can think of is Happy Death Day, and its sequel.
Right, Happy Death Day too. I would say a little Fear Street, for at least
Sure.
the
Yes. Yeah.
first movie,
Sure. Sure.
and definitely Stranger Things as once again TV, not a
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
definitely stands out. But yeah,
Right.
I think you're right.
It doesn't happen as often as it
Yeah,
was in the 80s and the 90s.
no, in the 80s and the 90s, it was always high school kids getting into trouble. I mean,
Hmm.
um, one of my favorites, Chris Sarandon, The Vampire Next Door. What's it called?
Oh, Lost Boys?
No, 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 no. They remade it with no, they didn't just remake it. They remade it with Colin Farrell as the vampire. Oh my God. How's my
Oh, yeah,
mind?
yeah, yeah.
How's my mind going blank on this movie?
That happens. So I
Yeah.
will mention, related to Ready or Not, I always think of Would You Rather when I think of Ready or Not. I saw in similar time, completely different movies, but close setting of like a dinner party. Would You Rather? Recommend that if you haven't seen Would You Rather yet.
Right, right. Fright Night.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So Fright Night.
People cursing us.
Yeah. Yeah. Fright Night. You've got like three main characters. They're all high schoolers. They're studying for a big test, and they see their new neighbor potentially bite a woman's neck and drain her blood through the window, and yeah, what a great movie. But yeah,
Yeah,
so the 80s was all high schoolers,
right.
is the point. And if you haven't seen Fright Night, the remake was also very good. They're
Hmm.
both great movies.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's a wrap.
Absolutely. Looking forward to next week. This was a great recap of the past year, though. We talked about all the highlights, some of the lowlights, and starting off this new year with a classic, a modern classic, not really an original, but definitely an homage to a lot of what made the originals what they were. It should be a good start into the new of this year because there's a lot ahead of us,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm looking forward to this being the gateway to that year.
Yeah, in addition to Scream 5, and we'll probably talk about all the Scream movies.
Mhm.
We will do a an anticipated of 2022 countdown.
Sure, yeah,
Uh,
things that are like
yeah.
on the radar to be coming out that are related to the genre.
Yep.
Absolutely, it'd be a lot of fun to look at that. Get excited for what's going to be happening.
Yeah. Absolutely. So thank you guys for tuning in for the podcast for the recently deceased. I'm Nate Roberts,
I am Rodney Godek. Thank you so much for joining us.
and we'll see you next week.